Here he is, John Canzano. Let me get all the stuff out of the way, and then we're going to jump right into it. There's so much news going on, and he's very busy, and he's got to get going on doing his real work, not just joining me. His weekly appearance brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, best selection of pizza and local Northwest craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. You can of course follow John, and I would, if you're not following him, follow him right now on Twitter at John Canzano BFT. All of his work up at johncanzano.com, including the very latest where we sit right now at the Pac-12 of the Mountain West. And, of course, you can listen to his radio show, The Bald Faced Truth, down there in Portland, Oregon, 7:50 The Game. All right, what's the latest? What do we got? What's going on?
Well, as it stands, the Pac-12 is sitting as a 7-member conference that has added Utah State as the latest official addition. UNLV is sitting in limbo, evaluating its options as the rest of the Mountain West Conference probably is as well. That conference sitting with 7 members and in limbo itself. But the latest news just a few minutes ago, Puck, is that the Pac-12 is taking the Mountain West Conference to court. They have filed a complaint in the Northern District of California, alleging that the poaching penalties that were part of the scheduling agreement between the Mountain West and the Pac-12 are not enforceable. They're asking a judge to throw those out, and they are arguing that it's an antitrust violation. And so I think that I think it's a really smart legal strategy by the Pac-12. Who knows? The potential outcome here could be the Mountain West simply negotiating a more favorable, financial term for the Pac-12. But right now, I think the Pac-12 is arguing that, those penalties are designed to create a competitive imbalance and to put the Pac-12 at a disadvantage and are a violation of antitrust. And they're also going to argue, Puck, that, the scheduling agreement with the Pac-12 and the Mountain West will end at the end of this football season. The poaching penalties in that contract, Section 7-01, if you want to climb down that rabbit hole, they extend for 2 years beyond the contract. And I talked with Gloria Navarez, the Mountain West Conference Commissioner, in San Diego a couple weeks ago, walking by her in Snapdragon Stadium, and I stopped her and I said, "Hey, help me with the poaching penalties." I said, "Do they end, or because the scheduling agreement is not going to extend?" And she said, no, they extend 2 years beyond this. That's what is at stake here. It's about $10 million per school. So as the Pac-12 starts to take 4 originally, now 5, and exploring the 6th school, UNLV, you're looking at $50, $60, $70 million. Every time you take a school, it's $10 million more.
Okay, so you don't think today we're not, until they resolve this, we're not going to have any update on UNLV or Air Force?
I think this UNLV thing, interestingly, is tied directly to all of this. And I'm kind of watching the dominoes fall. Like, you saw what happened yesterday. And I was told yesterday morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, that the Pac-12 had this cascading order of offers. That's how it was put to me. A cascading order of offers on the board that started with Memphis, Tulane, and the University of South Florida. So, the Pac-12 looked at that and said, hey, if they accept our terms, great. We take those 3 schools, you're done. If they don't accept the terms, then the Pac-12's plan was to pivot immediately to UNLV and Utah State. The Gloria Navarez and the Mountain West Conference did a smart thing, and they, tried best they could to hold those schools together. So they got everybody to kind of sign an agreement. Where does this sound familiar? And kind of look at each other and say, hey, we're in solidarity, until we're not. But that agreement, as I understand it, required that 8 members were part of the conference. And right now she's only got 7. Utah State is signed and sealed by the Pac-12, as are those 4 other schools. And so you're looking at a 7-member conference looking to add UNLV. And what the Mountain West is promising UNLV and Air Force and the other members is it's promising them, some bonuses for retention. And so they're basing that on the poaching penalties and the withdrawal fees that they expect to receive from the members who are leaving the conference. And so, I think there's some confusion right now in that space. Do they have that money? Or does the Pac-12 have that money potentially? If those poaching penalties are not enforceable, it gives the Pac-12 $40 or $50 million extra to go out and say, hey, we'll cover more of your exit fees if you're Memphis or Tulane. Hey, UNLV, we can give you a little more up front. And in addition to the media rights deal that we're planning to negotiate. So if I'm UNLV right now, I'm going to sit tight for a bit. I'm going to see what happens. Air Force may be talking further with the American. They make a lot of sense in the American alongside Army and Navy. But Mountain West is in a little trouble here. Pac-12 is using a legal maneuver today to try to squeeze and, leverage itself into a better situation.
Why didn't they initially just go after UNLV?
I think part of it was the element of surprise, and part of it may have been a little bit of a strategic mistake. But, think about this. The 4 schools that left, it was airtight. That was circle of trust, right? Nobody knew what they were doing. Everybody kind of knew that they were unhappy, and the Pac-12 was talking to those schools. In fact, Gloria Navarez, the Mountain West commissioner, told me that she knew it was 4 days before they left that I spoke with her. She knew that they were in contact with their schools, but I don't think she thought it was imminent. And all of a sudden on that Tuesday and that Wednesday, they were like, okay, we're leaving. But they had this element of surprise that the Mountain West could not react to. Very much different than, when the Pac-12 went after Memphis, Tulane, South Florida. Tim Pernetti, the American commissioner, had all this time to plan and fly to Memphis and talk to his members and come up with a plan that made sense to them. They really blindsided the Mountain West by taking those 4 members in the cover of night. And I think taking UNLV in that first bite ran the risk of you had to alert Nevada because the Board of Regents was going to have to approve it. So Nevada would have known about it. Gloria's going to find out about it. The Mountain West attorneys are going to be all over it. And maybe they moved to block it. So I think that first move, Puck, they felt they needed to go swift. They needed to go under a cloak of, secrecy. And, now it looks like a misfire that they didn't get UNLV, but getting Utah State into the fold sort of accomplishes the same thing now. And you have destabilized the Mountain West into a position where, if I'm UNLV, as long as the financials make sense to me, the Pac-12 looks better to me.
Clarify that whole UNLV Nevada thing, right?
Yeah.
There seems to be some confusion about that. When you and I talked last week, you were like, hey, they're kind of tied together with the state and what they need to approve on. And then that was, I don't know if not shot down, but yeah. No, I think someone said, well, no, that's not our understanding. So is it similar to how it was the state of California treated Cal and UCLA?
No, not quite like the Board of Regents and the UC system. They're much more, that's one system, right? And they're all about sort of serving the greater good of all the members. The issue in Nevada, and I stand by this, it's complex because you have one Board of Regents in that state that governs both schools. Oregon, the state of Oregon used to have that as well. They governed all the schools. And so, when a school says I'm leaving, like Oregon, I'd like to leave for the Big Ten Conference, in order to get those trustees to vote for it, they would have to look over and say, gosh, is this in the best interest of Oregon State? We need to talk this through. It would be on a board meeting agenda. It would be discussed. Now, ultimately, they may say, hey, it's better for Oregon to be in the Big Ten, but, we're not beholden to that. But, as it broke down in Oregon, now the system now has a board of trustees for each university. In the state of Nevada, the same board governs Nevada and UNLV. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying, I don't think that they would force them to stay together. There's precedent for this. UNLV left the WAC, for example, and left to go to the WAC in 1994, and Nevada got left behind in the Big West. I mean, there's precedent for them splitting. And I think they would be allowed to split. So I'm not arguing with that. But there's no way you would have kept this quiet from Nevada if you approach the Board of Regents and you say, UNLV would like to leave. That board's going to put it on an agenda meeting. It's going to hear testimony from Nevada about how this would impact Nevada. They're going to do their diligence, and you lose sort of the element of surprise. So I think the strategy there, while you may second guess it, and I can second guess it afterwards, I get what they were thinking when they said we were only going to take 4 in this bite.
John, again, John Canzano with us, of course, if you don't recognize the voice, and then just the beautiful face, John Canzano, BFT there on Twitter, johncanzano.com, all brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Okay, so you hinted at it a little bit. Do you think I wondered this earlier. They were so secretive about San Diego State and Boise State and Colorado State. I mean, it caught everybody off guard. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to Tulane and Memphis, and it was like out in the open, like everybody knew they were courting them. Is there a chance that could have been a plan, maybe on the behalf of the Pac-12, that it was orchestrated in a way?
I kind of feel like there was a little bit of strategy in that, because it made no sense. It made no sense that, you don't want to offer a job to somebody and have them turn you down publicly. You don't want to offer membership and have it get turned down. And the offer that the Pac-12 made to the American, it wasn't a no-brainer offer. And so I look at all of the rest of the expansion moves, Puck, that were made across college athletics in the last 2 years. All this realignment, expansion stuff, it's always a no-brainer financially. Like, you can talk about the loss of tradition, you can talk about the geography, but USC and UCLA saw $70 million in distribution. They compared it to the 30 that they might get or 40 they might get in the Pac-12, and they went, this is a no-brainer from a financial standpoint, we're going. The offer that the Pac-12 made to those AAC schools, it wasn't a no-brainer. And it was so publicly done and with no element of surprise that it left me kind of thinking, like, what was the strategy here? Well, and I'll just throw a conspiracy theory out there that I've heard and I've talked with people about. Is it possible that the Pac-12, liked Tulane and Memphis and South Florida, but didn't love the idea of the travel? Because as I talked with the Pac-12, they said, hey, look, from a financial standpoint, of course, these schools bring, media value relative to other G5 schools. They're good additions in football. You get some new markets, but there was a huge travel expense. And we're not talking about a media rights deal that would be a $50 or $70 million deal. We're talking 12, 15 million, best case scenario. I don't know. I'm not a media consultant, but those are the numbers that are out there. So when you start talking about several $1 million a year from the westward schools going east and the eastward schools going west, you're starting to eat into your bottom line in a way that doesn't make sense. And so I was not surprised to see that the Pac-12's offer to these schools was not like, hey, we're going to pick up the whole $25 million exit fee. It was more of a, I heard a report about 2.5 million. It's just not a no-brainer. And so I kind of wonder if the Pac-12 strategy here was to force the American into a position where, it had to kind of go all in on Memphis and Tulane and South Florida and maybe even UTSA as a defensive play, offer greater revenue sharing, offer, retention bonuses if they did that, but kind of force the hand of Tim Pernetti to kind of say, hey, I'm going to go all in with everything I've got here. And I'm just spitballing here, but is it possible that they didn't want to compete against the American for UNLV and maybe Air Force or Utah State? And so they went that route first on Monday morning, and then their cascading order of offers pivots to other schools, and they know now the Americans feeling like, okay, we retained our members. We don't really need to do much more. Now you're not in competition with those schools. I don't know. Like, I'm just kind of wondering what the Pac-12 strategy was, because it was so out there from a PR standpoint. You look like you asked somebody to the dance and you didn't get, they didn't accept it. Looks bad. And your offer wasn't a no-brainer offer. So I'm just kind of left thinking, like, was there an ulterior motive here by the Pac-12? Is there some strategy in getting Tim Pernetti and the American to kind of play defense right out of the gates, and then you go after who you really want? I don't know, because I was told that Utah State, when you remove the travel expenses from a Memphis, that the dollars between Utah State and Memphis were comparable in the bottom line, right? They don't bring as much media value. They're not as great a football program, even though they got 3 10-win seasons in the last 11 years. They add something, but when you factor in the travel expenses, all of a sudden they go, the bottom line is about the same. I don't know. Try that on and see how it suits you.
Yeah, something didn't smell right about it, but
right.
Maybe it's nothing, and maybe this is what they wanted to do, and we're, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't know.
A little bumbling, right? Like my wife walked in, I was writing the column, and she walked in and she goes, why would they publicly pursue them unless they knew they had them? And why does she know that? Like, why does everybody know they went after him? That shouldn't have been out there.
Yeah. And the Pac-12, they use a company called, is it Navigate?
Navigate, yeah.
For those who
company.
Okay, for those who don't know, because when they read your stuff and they read that you reference Navigate, that's helping out the Pac-12, maybe it's confusing to some. Just tell everyone what Navigate does. What business are they in?
They're in the consulting world, but their specialty is in valuation, data analysis. They really do help schools individually as they try to make these decisions, try to figure out, like, is this a good move? University of Oregon hired Navigate in trying to figure out, should they go to the Big Ten? Also, hey, by the way, Navigate can back channel in a way that, like, the athletic director and the university president can't when you are, under a grant of rights. And so Navigate will have those conversations with various entities, talk to the Big Ten, talk to Oregon, give Oregon some numbers. What does moving to the Big Ten conference mean for your brand? How much more revenue outside of media rights could you expect to, how is this good for you in all these ways? And it really does a great job of kind of drilling down and quantifying this. They've been retained by Gonzaga as well. They've been on retainer from Gonzaga for I think more than a year. They're not cheap. It could, this is a company that's going to charge you maybe several $100,000 to do this kind of analysis and have those conversations, but their fingerprints are on some of the moves you've seen in expansion and realignment. So they are definitely, the ones at the board. When I talk about that cascading order of offers, they're at the front of the room, sort of drawing up that board, deciding here is the order of operations as we make offers. Here's the strategy and what you want to go after. Certainly this legal maneuver that the Pac-12 pulled today, Navigate is going to be advising them on that. And, I think, yesterday as Utah State was brought into the fold, that was a Navigate move. They look at, Utah State and they saw them as a sneaky addition. You looked at the revenue that they've generated. They were 5th in the Mountain West in TV ratings after, the other 4 schools the Pac-12 already took. And so they made sense. And so, for you and I, we might go, oh, Utah State, we don't see it, but Navigate does. And Navigate sees the value of basketball as well. They've been talking, I think, with a variety of conferences like the Big 12 and others, in the last year about how basketball is undervalued. And so the Pac-12 bringing them into the fold, it's like, you're bringing, your strategist in there. Navigate probably won't do the media rights deal. That's not where their expertise is, but they would probably be involved in hiring whatever company that the Pac-12 does go with. And I am told that they have had conversations with some consultants.
Okay, so it's a perfect way to now pivot to basketball a little bit. There's the stories out there, reports out there about Gonzaga. We've talked about this before about the conference's interest in Gonzaga. Obviously, it makes perfect sense. It's in your footprint. They're an unbelievable brand. If you add them now, you really are building up quite the basketball conference. Where do we stand with the flirtation and the dance between the Pac-12 and Gonzaga?
Yeah, I mean, they've had ongoing conversations with Gonzaga, and those really have intensified in the last couple of weeks, but nothing is done. I happened to be on the phone with one of the two parties, Pac-12 and Gonzaga, yesterday when that tweet goes out saying the deal's done, full share, despite football. And I can tell you that, directly involved party on the other end of the phone was like, what? Like that? No, like, yeah, of course it may happen. I think the Pac-12 would love to have Gonzaga. I think they're building a basketball conference that looks like you could make an argument to be the first or second best conference in the country. Like if you get the right teams and you add Gonzaga to it, like that could be a really good basketball conference. But, this is a football first conversation with expansion and realignment. It's 80 to 85% of every media rights dollar has to do with football. The football decisions are going to get made first. I think Gonzaga is having those conversations. I think they may be interested in a short-term grant of rights. That's another thing we haven't talked about, Puck. Pac-12 is only asking the new members to sign a 5-year grant of rights. There's a little bit of honesty in that, right? Like, hey, we're not here for a long time. We're just here for a good time. We're going to position ourselves to be, players in the next round, and we're going to try to better ourselves. and get in position for whatever happens next, but we're not holding you here forever. The buyouts are not going to be like, exorbitant, the poaching penalties, all that stuff. I think the Pac-12 just wants to get a bunch of schools that really want to be like Power 4 schools in the room and see what those schools can do when they're put together. And so Gonzaga fits that. Gonzaga is looking for that next thing. Now, the question becomes, if they add Gonzaga, is it along with St. Mary's? Is it along with Grand Canyon? Is it along with someone else who may be unhappy in another conference? That's all to be determined.
But it's out there with St. Mary's that St. Mary's would be willing to jump ship from the WCC?
I haven't heard that directly, but I have heard, as I talked with Pac-12 sources, it keeps getting brought up in conjunction with someone else. And now I wondered if it's Grand Canyon, because I think in a lot of ways getting into Phoenix with Grand Canyon University, they are not they're not allergic to risk.
Yeah.
But I think if you just take Gonzaga, that's enough. Like I talked to Wayne Tinkle, the Oregon State men's basketball coach at the football game last week, and I said, hey, what do you think of this conference with San Diego State, Colorado State, Boise State, potential for Gonzaga? And he's like, that's a damn good conference.
It's a great that's a great basketball conference. Like a great basketball conference.
And tie it together, Puck, because Navigate, one of their initiatives in the last 18 months has been, they are telling media companies basketball is undervalued. Yeah. They're telling conferences basketball is undervalued. It just makes sense to me. And you and I talked about this even like 2 weeks ago. It makes sense to me that Gonzaga as a client of Navigate, the Pac-12 as a client of Navigate. Yes, you can marry these things together, but let's not just throw it out as a done deal. That didn't help anybody yesterday. And I thought it was interesting that within seconds it was refuted. Like it was not a difficult report to refute. And I just wonder why, people who were perpetuating it didn't pick up the phone and call one of the two entities. Very easy to kind of knock that down.
Okay. So who does the Big 12 use?
The Big 12 uses Endeavor.
And they're competitors with Navigate.
And Endeavor also works for the Mountain West.
This is great. God, I love this stuff. This is awesome.
There's a little Succession, a little Game of Thrones, but Endeavor wants to do it all. It wants to be the one-stop shop. It wants to negotiate media rights. That's probably where their specialty is. They're more in entertainment, but they certainly are involved in consulting and advising. You also have Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner. Look, he got out over his skis a little bit with the UConn thing. Remember this. He's talked with Gonzaga, really aggressively about adding UConn from a basketball standpoint. And his president slapped his hand and said, hey, we're just digesting the football thing. Like, what are you doing? And you saw that very quietly go away as football season started. No, UConn's not coming. It's on the back burner all of a sudden. So I just kind of wondered yesterday when I saw that tweet, I just said, okay, there were a couple things that jumped out. One was, it noted that Gonzaga was basketball only edition, and then it mentioned full share. And I just thought that was a lot to put out there. Yeah. And it didn't help the Pac-12, and it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. I don't know. I'm just the conspiracy theorist in me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I immediately thought of Endeavor. Of course. Thought, are they planting something, or is this just, everybody, once in a while makes an honest mistake? I don't know.
They want it out there because they want it out there so the other schools can see that the basketball school would get a full share and you football people wouldn't. Yeah. That's why.
I mean, it definitely affects an impact. It does not help.
No.
And it was interesting being on the phone with one of the two entities involved in that report and hearing the reaction in real time. It was just like, basically we're going to have to refute this. Yeah. And within seconds, I mean, you saw a cascade of, reporters who were fact checking, who were being told, no, not true. It may happen, the sides are talking. It makes sense.
Sure.
I don't think the Big 12 or the Mountain West would want it to happen, but the Pac-12, I think, would covet Gonzaga.
You want to talk some football?
Sure.
A few minutes of football. You are a voter for the Heisman Trophy, right?
Yeah.
Where do you have Mateer right now?
Yeah. Look, I think of that award as MVP.
Okay.
All right. It's an MVP award. It should be an MVP award, most outstanding player. But I also think about the value you have for your team. It's why Michael Penix Jr., in my book, belonged on the ballot 2 years ago, at the top of the ballot for me last year. I did not have Jaden Daniels at number 1. LSU fans hate me for it, but I don't think Jaden Daniels would have started at Washington.
Hey, I saw your buddy take a shot at you last night on Twitter.
I still don't think it, whatever. It's an opinion. Who cares? But John Mateer, for me, I mean, look, is he the best passer in America? No. Is he the best running quarterback in America? No. But that guy's a baller. And that guy does the combination and what he means to his team. If Washington State continues to win, if they can be an at-large team or a candidate late in this year for the college football playoff, they have to get an at-large berth. They're not eligible for anything else. If they're sitting there at 12-0 at the end of the season, how do you not consider John Mateer? How do you not have him on your ballot? I mean, he's carrying that team. He means more to that team in ways that, can be quantified and not quantified. And loved after the game, they beat San Jose State. And by the way, San Jose State, fearless. Can we just say that for a second? Fearless.
Great football team. After
the game, what is Mateer doing? He's saying, I missed some guys, and, it was my teammates, and, I play on a great team. And I was just like, we need more of that.
That was a wild game. I've never seen a game up and down. You think you won. You think you're going to dominate, right? You think you're going to, you're going to go up by 18 at one point, and then they come back. You're down by 2 scores. You rally late. You've got missed field goal, missed extra point. I mean, it was, Dean Janikowski, who had missed an extra point. Dean Janikowski, who has not been good since going back to last year, 3 of 9, I believe. Most people, including myself, had zero confidence he's going to nail a 52-yarder. And then he lines it up and he drills it. It's probably good from 60. It was a wild game.
I saw Ryan Leaf the following day because he was on the CW broadcast of Oregon State's game the following day. And, I said to him, what'd you think of that game? Because the CW got its, indoctrination to Pac-12 after dark in that game. Like, it's like, welcome to the family for the CW. They had to love that game, Puck. Like, I know you were, you probably got an ulcer, but the television station got a great game. San Jose State was a great endorsement of them as a program. But, Ryan Leaf didn't enjoy it as much as I did because I was sort of enjoying it as the theater of football. What a great game. And his eyes were so big as he was kind of talking about like the end of that game and the agony he was going through, I think, as a Washington State alum, wanting his team just to run the football there at the end instead of throw it in the overtime.
Well, that was a terrible play.
But credit, good teams find a way.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to be better against Boise State. I think they have to be undefeated. I don't think you want to leave your fate in the hands of a CFP committee that, will be influenced by ESPN and Fox and the shoulder programming shows that will say, they're not a great team. They don't play in a great conference, all that nonsense. But I think it really does line up well for Washington State. They're in a position to matter, and that's all you could have dreamed for if you're a Cougar fan last season.
I don't understand. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm gonna do it a little bit. I'm gonna play the audio with "Hey, what the puck" at the end. But I don't understand the Joel Klatt taking a shot at the conference. I don't understand it. I don't understand why you take a shot at it to basically dismiss it. It makes no sense to me. And what I don't understand about Joel Klatt is this. He's a good broadcaster. I enjoy listening to him do a game. You didn't come from some college football hotbed. It's Colorado, who was the worst team in the conference, the absolute worst team. And I think his opinion gets so discredited when he slobbers all over Dion in Colorado, talking about how much he's changed the fortunes of the school. He hasn't done anything. The 2 years before Dion, they were 4-8. Their record last year, they were 4-8. They're not a good football team. They beat a bad Baylor team, and they'll get exposed here later in the season. But I just don't get it from Joel Klatt. I mean,
well, who's he work for? Where is he saying this stuff? Is it on Fox?
Yeah, I mean,
Look, Fox and ESPN, like it or not, Fox and ESPN they're in business with the Big 12 and the Big 10 and the SEC and the ACC. They're in business with these conferences. They have a vested interest in those teams being in the playoff. I can tell you right now that the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12 are very worried about where those at-large berths are going to go. They know that the Pac-12 has a potential candidate in Washington State. At this point of the season, 4 weeks in, a month into the season, the Pac-12's got a candidate. They do not want to give away one of those berths. You can bet that, there's some messaging going on, whether it's overt or just subtle. There's messaging going on saying, hey, that team would be the 4th or 5th best team in our conference, all that nonsense that gets put out there. But the truth is, like, Boise State took Oregon to the mattresses, in a great game at Autzen Stadium. You beat Boise at Boise. That's a quality win. That's a better win than I think, most of these, conferences can post. Big 12 ACC, certainly. It's the same as going to Utah and winning. All right. It's that quality of win against that quality and that brand of program. But you're going to get this from the shoulder programming at ESPN and Fox. And it's one of the advantages when you do a media rights deal with these companies. You get the glow of that shoulder programming. And, don't mistake that as the Pac-12 goes to market here in the next month or two after they figure out who's in the conference. Don't mistake the value of having ESPN pounding the drum for you, knowing that ESPN and Fox want their teams and their products in the playoff race, and they want them ranked, and they want to be able to promote late in the year. Hey, look at our team playing for a playoff spot. The CW has Washington State and Oregon State, and the CW will be doing that as well. But it's easy to see once you understand the motivations that are involved in that stuff. And I can tell you that, I've been in on those production meetings at Fox and other places. I know how it's talked about. It's not like they're saying go out and say they're no good, but they definitely want the teams in their conferences represented in this playoff. And that's why you got to go 12-0. If you're sitting at 11-1, you're going to be on the bubble at 11-1. I looked back at Tulane from 2022 and other examples with the CFP playoff. If you're sitting there at one loss, you're really leaving yourself in a position where you're going to have to find somebody in that room that believes in you. I do look at the makeup of the committee. I like that a coach like Mike Riley is on the CFP committee. Get real football people on the committee instead of just TV people. But, I would support a system that just gave you all coaches. Get a bunch of former coaches in that room. Let them be the judges. But I just think, it's a reminder, Puck, that you don't want to leave your fate in the hands of, the broadcasters on ESPN and Fox.
Yeah. There he is, John Canzano, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza Selection. They got best selection of pizzas in local craft Northwest beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. You can follow John on Twitter, John Canzano BFT. Read all of the fabulous work. He's got latest stories on the Pac-12 Mountain West. The best place, the one-stop shop to go to, JohnCanzano.com for the very latest, the situation with the Pac-12, UNLV, Air Force. Again, follow him on Twitter, John Canzano BFT. Check out the radio show down there in Portland. I'm going to tell you, he's got college football. He'll talk a little. He's going to have some news on Major League Baseball in Portland. He does a daily check where he does Hobo by the River. It's a new feature that he has introduced.
Brought to you by the Willamette River.
Brought to you by the Willamette. Let's find a hobo who swims in the Willamette and see if he survives.
It's not going to take long, Puck. I think, the Pac-12 will make a move here. This legal filing is interesting, but they want to get to market with their media rights. So stay tuned.
All right. And again, in case you missed it, it's going to be up on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and of course up at pucksports.com.